Look at what finally arrived in the mail. Okay, this is going to be a difficult one.
なんだ君は誰だ
So, as you can see, after a month of waiting, because this was supposed to arrive for my birthday, which it obviously didn't, I finally got to see the third Persona 3 movie, Falling Down. This is actually the longest it's taken me to see one of these movies, because when the first and second movie came out in theaters in Japan, I was actually in Japan at the time, so I was able to view them straight in the theaters. And that was pretty amazing. I was blown away both times. It was pretty awesome seeing all these events unfold on the big screen, see what they can do to really take advantage of the medium of animation to convey the story, because it's no big secret that Persona 3 and Persona 4 are built on an engine that's not very versatile. It's very straightforward, the way the models move, there's very little cinematography that you can put in. So I was really hyped to see this movie, because this movie has some of the most important scenes in the game. The first and second movie adapted the events of the game in a rather flexible way. They really took advantage of the medium of film and changed the events in a way that consisted of giving less exposition but showing more. This is exactly what you're supposed to do when you convert something to film. You're supposed to make use of show don't tell. When you have the medium of animation, you can do so many things. Every little expression, every little smile, little twist of the head, it's all just right there for you to manipulate. You don't need to use as many words when you have the possibility to actually show what the characters are going through and what is happening visually. And that's what the first and second movie did really well. They just cut out a lot of the exposition and instead showed us what the characters were going through. The character of Makoto, the main character, of the protagonist of the games, he has very few lines. He talks, but he doesn't talk much. And yet his character comes out really strongly. He has a much more defined character than Yu Narukami from Persona 4 ever had. I like you. I like you a lot, but just the way the first and second movies portrayed Makoto, as his fears, his complexes, his traumata were exceptionally well portrayed. He never really needed to say a word. You could understand what he was going through just by the images that were shown, the visuals. It was pretty amazing, which is why I still consider the first and second Persona 3 movies to be some of my favorite animated movies that I've seen in recent history. I was really hyped to see this movie, and it's good. It's good. It's good. It's not great. It's not amazing. It's not breathtaking. It's good. When I first saw this, I immediately noticed that there were some things that this movie did very differently from the first two. First of all, there is a distinct use of flashback scenes that the first two movies never really indulged in. The first two movies rather like to show us things with more creative visuals, using some really twisted angles, colors, just really brief flashes of sound played over something completely different, but in a way that was still effective. This movie just goes straight into flashback territory, and it's not that the kind of flashback that's effective, it's the kind of flashback that makes you feel like you're in a really in the beginning of a Tales of game. Tales of games in the beginning like to flashback to things that happened 2 minutes ago, like every other moment, and this is what this movie also does. We have, alone in the first half hour, I think there were like 2-3 flashbacks to Shinji's death from the previous movie. And like, that was a very emotional scene, but it's not even a really well done flashback. Even as I was watching it, in my mind I was kind of thinking over 100 different ways that this could have been done that would have been more effective. I mean, the movie starts a very effective way. The first thing we see is Makoto being swung over the Moonlight Bridge, like you really feel the impact that he had just dealt with, even though we don't see what happened. And then it's really weird. We see Cease fighting both Straga and the last Moonlight Shadow. And I was like, wait a moment, these two battles did not happen at the same time. This is the battle where Chidori kidnapped Junpei, which was very effective then, because Chidori and Junpei had built a relationship by then, but not a really strong one, but at least there was something there. And you felt happy for Junpei for finding someone who would listen to him and such, but here they just kind of throw this at us right in the beginning of the movie, and the last thing we saw in the previous movie was Shinjiro's death. So it's just really confusing, especially if you've played the game, because it takes you like a few minutes to realize what is going on here, because they are throwing like three different events, because like Ferris goodbye is worked into it as well. Like they do this all at once, and you have three different events coming straight at you, thrown right in your face, and you have to process it all. And even I, as someone who's played the game, had trouble thinking through what is actually happening in what order. Like, is this the shadow they're attacking, or is it the persona because for some reason, actually, some of these personas and the final shadow looked kind of similar, and it just blended together. And even though the dialogue that Ferris speaks, throughout the whole scene, Makoto is in his mind conversing with Ferris, by which I mean he's not saying anything. It's Ferris who's talking to him about the inevitability of death and basically the themes of the game, and how he's basically reading Makoto's emotions, reading his complexes. You can see that Ferris has a deep understanding of Makoto's psyche and can communicate with him without even needing to talk to him. This is actually very effective. If only it weren't thrown at us with two different battles going on at the same time that were in completely different spots in the game. So we're just dealing with this, and we're like, when they win, we're not actually sure. Did they defeat Straga, or did they defeat the enemy Shadow, or did they defeat both at once? And it just all blends together, and 10 minutes later, you don't really understand anymore what happened. But it's at least an exciting opening, and the animation is really impressive. And even when these strange flashbacks happen, it still feels like there's a lot of power behind everything that happens. And then we get to the middle part of the movie. Let's just say I think Aniplex kind of cut the budget for this movie. When we get to the middle part of the movie, it's not that the animation goes bad, but it goes limited. Suddenly the characters will often just stand in place and talk, and we don't see the expressions change a whole lot. We don't see them move a whole lot. It's mostly just them standing and talking, which would be fine if this was the game, because this is what happens in the game, because the game is limited with its models and the engine. But the first two movies, they had a lot of talking scenes, but there were little things going on with the talking scenes, little movements, motions that made it more investing. And this movie had a lot less of that. But there were some really good scenes, some really well done scenes. Um, for example, the hot spring scene, the infamous hot spring scene, they kind of changed that scene so that it's not actually Junpei and Ryoji's plan to spy on the girls, making them look a little bit more like decent human beings, thank goodness. At least we got to see Mitsuru's execution, even if it was just a premonition on Akiko's part. This is something that I really enjoy about these movies, that we get to see things that can't really be done in the games or would take too long to do, that we can see them animated in these movies. This is what I watch them for. So seeing little tidbits like the execution, or just I guess doing all these physical things, that a lot of the physical comedy is something that I really enjoy. But then there's also really awkward things, like there are some scenes where awkwardly cut from one shot to another shot, and in the next shot, like the characters will be positioned differently from where they were in the previous shot. Like they actually skipped over some animation, and I know this can be seen as a stylistic thing, but it didn't come off as a stylistic thing here. It felt like we wanted to animate this, but we didn't. And it was distracting at times, especially in some of the scenes with Chidori. With this character, I expected some really smooth, slow animation because her scenes are supposed to be slow. It's supposed to really get you pulled into her emotions, let you understand the silence and the emptiness that she is feeling. And at some points, it really did this well. Actually, this movie did a great deal humanizing Chidori. You really did feel that Chidori was uh, a faceted human being who actually was capable of more than one emotion, which was something that I was missing in the game, because in the game with her limited sprite sets, it often felt like she didn't really change. Like, you couldn't see her actually expressing any of the things that Junpei said that she was expressing. But in this movie, we see her laugh, we see her expressions change. It's actually pretty nice because it helps really build a connection to this character, which makes it all the more powerful when she finally dies. Even though Chidori is humanized a lot, I don't think they really focused enough on her. One scene that they didn't put in that I wish they did put it in was in the game. There is a scene where Chidori and Junpei talk about future aspirations, and that's where Junpei actually first brings up that he would like to play baseball, something that later comes into play in Persona 4 Ultimax. This is actually really crucial because we see that he's actually also the type who is quick to give up on his aspirations, which furthers the connection between him and Chidori, because she's sort of on an extreme of something that he might derail to as well if it weren't for his encounter with her. It's a damn shame that this scene wasn't shown, and it's even sadder because what was shown instead is like a lot of the time in this movie was spent on Ryoji, and that's not a bad thing because I love Ryoji. He was like my first favorite character in the Persona series that I ever had. So this character is really important to me. But the thing is, in this movie, he's how do I put it? He's Kaoru Nagisa. There's no way around it. He's just straight up Kaoru Nagisa. We don't really see much of Ryoji's own internal struggle. We see a little bit of it. But instead of that really being the focus of it, he's just straight up Kaoru Nagisa from Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Makoto is Shinji Ikari, about which I'm going to talk a little bit later. But like, it's the exact same dynamic. It's the exact same way of encounter. It's the exact same kind of dialogue. And I know Ryoji was based on Kaoru. Everybody knows that Ryoji was based on Kaoru. He has the same voice actor. His color palette was based on Kaoru's palette. But still, it's just way too obvious in this. What I really wanted to see with Ryoji was his human side. I wanted to see him, like, his flaws, his goofing around, and there wasn't a lot. There was some of it, like we saw him trying to bond with Makoto, which was nice. We saw him interacting with the other students at the school, but like his friendship with Junpei, for example, was completely cut. There were some snippets of it, but in the game, his friendship with Shinpei was actually more important than his friendship with Makoto. Which I'm not saying that this was a good thing in the game, because this was actually one of the weaker points in the game, because I felt that the connection between the protagonist and Ryoji should have been built more. But here, just the way his friendship with Junpei is downplayed, especially after Chidori dies. Junpei should have had more of his romance with Chidori developed. He should have had more of his friendship with Ryoji shown, but instead, both of this was pushed aside to focus on, and there's really no other way to say it, the romance between Ryoji and Makoto. And now don't call me out for calling it that, because so many beats from this relationship that they showed between Makoto and Ryoji were taken straight from the social link that Ryoji had with the female protagonist in Persona 3 Portable. And that's not a bad thing, because that was a good social link, but it was also a very very romantic social link from start to end, and you can feel this in this movie. Even in Persona 3 Portable, Ryoji admitted that he would still have been in love with the protagonist even if she would have been a man. So I guess that's what they were going for, like having Ryoji's own romance with Makoto juxtaposed with Junpei and Chidori's romance, which worked pretty well, even if it made Akihiko and Shinjiro also look like a couple with how they were likened to both of these relationships. Which also resulted in Ken being pretty much the only person in the movie who did nothing, because Yukari and Mitsuru had their moments as they did in the games. They were well done. They were also well done in the games, so there wasn't really much that they could have messed up here. This was exactly the same, on point. It felt powerful. And Fuka had her scene with Natsuki, which also felt strangely romantic. Like, I felt it in the first movie too, but Fuka and Natsuki in these movies kind of strike me as a lot more romantic than they actually were in the game. So I wonder if there's a personal preference of the directors and writers that are flowing into their. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. But yeah, Ken did pretty much nothing in this movie. In fact, even when they were fighting, he summoned his persona, I think, one grand time, and the rest of the time he was just petting Koromaru and being cute. I guess he had a big part in the previous movie, but it was still kind of sad to see him sidelined like that. Then again, everybody else got a lot of spotlight, so that's good. Another thing that I really love about this movie is the way that Aigis was handled. I really enjoyed it when Makoto asked her if she wasn't going to disappear as well, because this really built up for the final movie. You could feel it, and if you know how the story ends, it was already painful here. When Aigis realizes that Makoto is in turmoil because all his old traumata are coming back up again, and he has these old fears of everybody that he connects to dying and disappearing or leaving him. And he's in total mental disarray because of this. And Aigis actually realizes this, and Aigis actually promises him here that she is immortal and she's not going to leave him. And the way he embraces her and holds on to her, clings to her, and really, like, she's his safe line. She's his connection to the real world. She's the person that he doesn't need to be afraid of, because everybody else he has to be afraid of because he doesn't know when they are going to disappear, when they are going to vanish. He has no way of knowing for how long anybody is going to be there with him, and that's really relatable and really powerful. I really enjoyed it when Aigis started to show her own emotions in regard to that, and when Aigis showed how much she really genuinely cared for him. And I actually really enjoyed it when she started acting like a jealous girlfriend, like really tried to push herself into every shot that Makoto and Ryoji were in together, just trying to get in between there, like, mine, not yours, mine.
歓迎会カラオケ行くんじゃねえの彼も誘おうと思ってダメでありますりょうちさんはダメであります誠さんと一緒にいることは許可できません
Actually, she really reminded me of a certain someone else there.
I can sing. What?
Come to think of it, maybe I should do a video on how similar these two characters are sometime. But the biggest crux, the biggest problem that the movie had was like, say it with me now, show, don't, tell. The previous two movies didn't have this problem at all. As I said before, Makoto is actually a character who can convey a lot without ever talking, and in this movie, he kind of talks all the time, and it's not that he's saying anything interesting or anything really that powerful. He's just pretty much reciting his feelings, and it's always the same. He's always just saying, I connect to you, you are going to go away. I don't want to connect to you. If I connect to you, you are going to die, and I'm going to be sad. This was your exact issue in the first movie as well, but you didn't need to talk about it all the time, and I understand he's being re-traumatized here. His post-traumatic stress is all coming up again. But that doesn't mean that he has to talk about it all the time. It just could be shown another way. Like, you could show a lot of scenes of him just being shut away in his room and people knocking on his door, and he just refuses to come out. And then Ryoji actually repeating everything that he said and saying it again. It just got really tired after a while. I feel that, like, this movie would just be a lot better if, like, 2/3 of Makoto's dialogue were muted. Like, you just mute the scene and make it so that his mouth doesn't move, and Twilight would be a lot better, because these are things that should have been expressed here through facial expressions, through his body language, but not through his words. That was a really, really poor directing choice right here. And then the final insult added to injury was when we got to the final scene, the big scene that I've been waiting for. Ryoji and Aigis meeting up on the Moonlight Bridge and discussing their past. And it was really tense, it was really dramatic. And I was just waiting to finally see the big moment where Ryoji's power bursts out of him and he can't control it. And he destroys Aigis' body in the process of just avoiding to be destroyed. And we don't see it. It, like it did in the game, it just cuts straight to Aigis on the floor, and we never actually see him attacking her. And I know maybe they just wanted to carry this over from the game because it was something that wasn't done there either, but this is the point of the movies. You're supposed to do things that were not done in the game to give us a new experience. And I was really looking forward to this scene, and it was just a letdown when it didn't happen. They also really cut the movie off at a really, really odd place. Like before Ryoji tells them that he's deaf, just it ends with Aigis on the floor and everybody just staring at Ryoji, and that's where it ends. And they should have either ended it at Chidori's death, or they should have played it a little longer, like ended it with a little after the exposition, because this was a really odd way to end the movie. It didn't quite flow right, it felt a little wrong. Then again, I guess the movie was already delayed, so maybe there were some production issues involved. I have no way of knowing. But yeah, this is pretty much it. This is pretty much all I have to say. It's a good movie. It's not a great movie. It has some great elements to it, but the things that were not done as well as they were in the first two movies just stood out with like a sore thumb, and it was a little bit disappointing. If you saw the first two movies, you should watch this one. Like, I recommend it if you saw the first two movies, but I wouldn't recommend it as a standalone. Unlike the first movie, which totally works as a standalone, this one, even if you love Ryoji. So yeah, that would be all for this. Really looking forward to the final movie, especially with all that has been built up between the protagonist and Aigis. Still a little bit disappointed that my poor Ryoji prince wasn't really treated like the funny little dog that he's supposed to be in this, my prince. But yeah, life's life. That's it for me for now. I hope you all could glean something new from this. Yeah, see you all around in my next video. Ciao!